The war room buzzed with nervous energy as Admiral Chen Ji-woo stared at the holographic display showing 12 red zones across the galaxy. Each red mark represented a star system that had fallen to the Kethran Empire in just 3 months. The aliens moved like a plague across space, destroying everything in their path. "Admiral, we lost contact with the 7th Fleet 2 hours ago," reported Commander Hayes, his voice tight with worry. "That's 3 full battle groups in 1 week." Chen rubbed his tired eyes. The Galactic Defense Coalition had thrown their best ships against the Kethran advance. The elegant Zorillian cruisers, with their perfect energy shields, had lasted barely a day. The swift Altarian interceptors, pride of their homeworld, were swept aside like insects. Even the massive Venturian dreadnoughts, each one carrying enough firepower to level a moon, had been torn apart by Kethran tactics. "What about the human fleet?" asked Colonel Martinez, the Coalition's human representative. "Still assembling at Earth," Chen replied. "Though I don't know what good they'll do. Human ships are so basic compared to what we've already lost." Far above Earth's blue surface, Captain Sarah Martinez walked through the corridors of the USS Black Star. The ship felt different from the sleek alien vessels she had visited. Where other races built their ships like works of art, humans built theirs like tools. The Black Star's halls were painted in simple gray, with clear signs and practical layouts that any crew member could understand. "Final systems check complete, Captain," reported Lieutenant Commander David Park from the bridge. The young Korean-American engineer had spent the last 6 months fine-tuning every system on the ship. "All weapon systems are green. Arya is running at full capacity." Sarah nodded as she entered the bridge. Arya, the Adaptive Response Intelligence Architecture, was humanity's answer to alien tactical computers. While other races programmed their ships to follow preset battle plans, humans had built something different. Arya was designed to learn, to adapt, to become better. With each fight, "Any word from command?" asked Commander Elena Vasquez from the weapons station. The experienced officer had trained on every weapon system the Coalition possessed. But the Black Star carried something new. Weapons that could change their function during battle. "We're ordered to join the defense of New Geneva," Sarah announced. 200 Coalition ships are already moving to intercept the Kethran fleet. Park frowned at his console. "Captain, I've been reading the battle reports. The Kethran seem to know how we fight before we even engage them. They counter every tactic, predict every strategy." "That's because they think like machines," Elena said, checking her weapon systems. "They analyze data, find patterns, exploit weaknesses. It's how they've conquered so many worlds." Sarah stared out at the stars through the view screen. "Maybe that's their weakness too." "Arya, are you monitoring this conversation?" "Yes, Captain Martinez," came the calm voice of the ship's artificial intelligence. "I have analyzed all available data on Kethran tactical doctrine. They are highly efficient, but they rely on predictable responses from their enemies. And humans aren't predictable, are we?" "No, Captain. Human tactical thinking often defies logical analysis. This may present an advantage." The ship's communication system crackled to life. "All vessels. This is Admiral Chen, aboard the Coalition flagship. Jump to hyperspace in 5 minutes. New Geneva is under attack. Civilian evacuation is in progress, but Kethran forces are targeting the refugee ships." Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Targeting civilians wasn't just warfare. It was murder. She looked around her bridge and saw the same expression on every face. Humans had a simple rule about protecting the innocent, and someone was about to break it. "Area, plot a course for New Geneva. Maximum speed." "Course plotted, Captain. Estimated arrival in 47 minutes." The Black Star jumped to hyperspace alongside the Coalition fleet. Through the swirling blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel, Sarah reviewed what they knew about their enemy. The Kethran Empire had appeared on the galaxy's edge 5 years ago. They were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and cold, calculating minds. They saw other species as either resources to be used or obstacles to be removed. Their ships were masterpieces of engineering. Sleek, deadly, and perfectly coordinated. Every Kethran vessel knew exactly what every other ship was doing at all times. They fought like a single organism with hundreds of deadly parts. "Captain," Park said quietly, "the other ships in the fleet, they're not expecting much from us." Sarah had noticed the dismissive comments from alien commanders during the briefing. To them, the Black Star looked primitive. It was angular where their ships were curved, dark where theirs gleamed, and built for function instead of beauty. "Let them underestimate us," Elena said with a grim smile. "Might give us an advantage." The hyperspace tunnel began to collapse as they approached New Geneva. Through the view screen, they could see the blue and green world that housed 3 million colonists from a dozen different species. It should have been a peaceful sight. Instead, they saw fire. Kethran ships hung in space like dark angels, their weapons cutting through the planet's atmosphere to strike evacuation centers. Worse, their fighter squadrons were hunting down civilian transports, trying to escape the surface. On the tactical display, Sarah watched as red blips, Kethran fighters, closed in on blue dots that represented ships full of families trying to reach safety. "Dear God," whispered Park. The Coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace in battle formation. 200 of the galaxy's finest warships arranged themselves in perfect tactical displays, ready to defend the innocent world below. For a moment, Sarah felt hope. Then, the Kethran fleet turned to face them, and she understood why they had conquered 12 systems. There weren't just 50 or 60 enemy ships. There were over 300 Kethran vessels of various sizes, from small destroyers to massive battleships that dwarfed anything in the Coalition fleet. They moved with perfect coordination, shifting into attack formations that looked like deadly geometric patterns. "All ships, engage at will," Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the comm. "Protect those civilian transports at all costs." The battle began badly. Zorillian cruisers, their shields blazing with rainbow energy, charged forward only to be caught in coordinated crossfire from a dozen Kethran destroyers. Altarian fighters, moving faster than the eye could follow, found themselves trapped in gravity fields that held them motionless for Kethran weapons. Sarah watched ship after ship fall on the tactical display. The aliens weren't just losing, they were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that seemed to know exactly what they would do before they did it. "Captain," Aria's voice was different now, somehow more focused. "I am detecting patterns in Kethran movements. They are adapting their tactics in real time, but their adaptations follow logical progressions. Can you counter them?" "Unknown. I require more data. Recommend maintaining distance and observing enemy tactical responses." Sarah made a decision that would change everything. Instead of rushing into battle like the other Coalition ships, she kept the Black Star back, watching. To the other commanders, it looked like cowardice. In reality, it was something much more dangerous. It was a human learning how to hunt. The bridge of the Kethran flagship was a study in cold efficiency. War Master Thex Kull watched the battle unfold on multiple displays, his 4 arms moving across control panels with mechanical precision. To him, warfare was mathematics. Calculate enemy capabilities, predict their responses, apply overwhelming force to critical points. The Coalition forces were performing exactly as his tactical computers had predicted. The Zorillian ships relied too heavily on their shields, making them vulnerable to sustained fire from multiple angles. The Altarians trusted their speed, which meant they could be trapped using gravity projectors. The Venturians brought massive firepower, but poor maneuverability, so coordinated strikes on their engine sections would cripple them. "Sector 7 is clear, War Master," reported his second-in-command. "All Zorillian vessels destroyed. Estimated time to complete tactical superiority, 17 minutes. Thexcol nodded with satisfaction. 17 minutes to destroy 200 enemy ships was acceptable. His forces would then complete their primary mission, eliminating every civilian transport trying to escape New Geneva. The Kethran Empire had learned long ago that fear was more effective than force. Let word spread that resistance meant the death of everything a species held dear. On the coalition side, panic was spreading faster than weapons fire. Admiral Chen watched helplessly as his carefully planned formations crumbled under Kethran precision. Every time his ships tried a new tactic, the enemy seemed to anticipate it perfectly. "Sir, we've lost 60% of our forward line," reported his tactical officer. "The Kethran are moving to intercept the civilian transports." Chen's jaw tightened. Those transports carried over 50,000 refugees. Families, children, elderly colonists, who had done nothing but choose to live on a frontier world. All remaining ships, protect those civilians at any cost. But even as he gave the order, Chen knew it was hopeless. His fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that fought like a machine, programmed to win at any cost. Aboard the Black Star, Captain Sarah Martinez watched the slaughter with growing anger. But her anger was different from the helpless rage of other coalition commanders. It was cold, calculating, and shared by her ship's artificial intelligence. "Aria, analysis complete?" "Affirmative, Captain. I have identified 17 distinct Kethran tactical patterns. They operate under the assumption that enemy responses will follow logical parameters. When faced with overwhelming force, most species either retreat or attempt desperate frontal attacks. What do they expect us to do? Retreat or die?" Sarah smiled grimly. "Then, let's do something they don't expect. Elena, are our weapon modifications ready?" Commander Vasquez ran her hands over her console with the confidence of someone who had spent months preparing for this moment. "All systems ready, Captain. Adaptive ammunition is loaded and ready. Our railguns can switch between kinetic penetrators, electromagnetic pulse rounds, and plasma charges mid-flight. David, how's our stealth system?" Lieutenant Commander Park checked his engineering readouts. "The Kethran sensors are designed to track ships that want to be seen. Our stealth isn't about hiding, it's about looking like something we're not." The Black Star had been built using a philosophy no other species shared. While aliens built ships to excel at specific functions, humans built ships to be adaptable. The Black Star could reconfigure its weapon systems during battle, change its sensor signature to confuse enemies, and most importantly, learn from every encounter. "Aria, you've been watching them fight. What did you learn?" The artificial intelligence paused for exactly 0.3 seconds. An eternity for a computer. But Aria was processing something more complex than simple calculations. "Captain, the Kethran tactical approach assumes logical responses to specific stimuli. However, human tactical doctrine incorporates elements they cannot predict: emotional responses, irrational courage, and protective instincts that override survival calculations. In other words, they have never fought humans before." On the tactical display, Sarah watched a Kethran squadron break away from the main battle. 6 sleek destroyers were moving toward a group of civilian transports that had just cleared the planet's atmosphere. The transports were defenseless, cargo ships converted to carry refugees, with no weapons and minimal shields. Something changed in Sarah's expression. Around the bridge, her crew felt it too. This wasn't about military tactics anymore. This was about murder. "Aria, target that squadron. Full stealth approach." The Black Star seemed to fade from enemy sensors. Not invisible, but unimportant. Just another piece of space debris drifting through the battle zone. The ship moved with a grace that surprised even its own crew, sliding between laser blasts and missile trails like a ghost. The Kethran squadron never saw them coming. The first destroyer exploded without warning. Its crew had 0.4 seconds to register that something had hit them before their ship became an expanding cloud of superheated gas. The second destroyer managed to turn toward the threat before 3 railgun rounds punched through its hull at different angles, each one calculated to disable specific systems. The remaining 4 ships tried to scatter, but Arya had predicted their evasion patterns. The artificial intelligence wasn't just calculating trajectories. It was reading their psychology, understanding how beings who thought like machines would react to the unexpected. The third destroyer took an electromagnetic pulse round that fried every circuit on the ship, leaving it drifting helplessly. The fourth tried to ram the Black Star in desperation, only to find that humans had built their ship to handle close combat. Point defense turrets reduced the Kethran vessel to scrap metal before it could get within a kilometer. The last 2 destroyers managed to send a distress signal before they died. The signal contained something that had never before appeared in Kethran tactical databases: uncertainty. These report: uncertainty. Unknown vessel using unpredictable tactics. The transmission read: unable to calculate effective countermeasures. Request immediate tactical analysis update. War Master Thexcall received the message with something approaching confusion. In 300 years of conquest, the Kethran Empire had never encountered an enemy they couldn't analyze and counter. Every species fought according to predictable patterns based on their psychology and technology. Replay the engagement, he ordered. The tactical hologram showed the destruction of his squadron from multiple angles. Thex Cole watched the unknown ship, human, according to the databases, move through his vessels like they weren't even fighting back. Its weapons seemed to anticipate where his ships would try to dodge. Its movements defied tactical logic. Most disturbing of all, the ship had acted with perfect coordination between its artificial intelligence and organic crew. Kethran ships were controlled entirely by computers for maximum efficiency. Alien vessels were controlled entirely by biological crews for maximum adaptability. But this human ship seemed to blend both approaches into something new. Analysis? Thexcol demanded. Unknown, War Master. The human vessel's tactics do not match any recorded patterns. Its weapon systems appear to be adaptive, changing function during combat. Most concerning, its targeting seems to prioritize psychological impact over tactical efficiency. Thexcol's cold eyes focused on the display. Explain. The human ship could have destroyed our vessels more quickly, using direct approaches. Instead, it chose methods that would cause maximum fear among survivors. This suggests emotional rather than logical tactical priorities. For the first time in his military career, War Master Thexcol felt something he didn't immediately recognize: doubt. Aboard the Black Star, Captain Martinez watched the civilian transports reach the safety of the Coalition's defensive perimeter. 50,000 lives saved, including thousands of children who would never know how close they had come to death. Captain, Arya's voice had changed again, becoming somehow more focused, more determined. I have observed something significant about Kethran psychology. They fear unpredictability more than death. Their entire civilization is built on the assumption that all outcomes can be calculated. So what do we do with that information? We teach them to be afraid. Elena Vasquez looked up from her weapons console with an expression that was both excited and slightly worried. Captain, Arya is requesting permission to modify our combat protocols. It wants to prioritize psychological warfare over standard tactical efficiency. Sarah considered this for a moment. They were one ship against hundreds, facing an enemy that had conquered dozens of worlds. Standard tactics had failed spectacularly. Maybe it was time to try something that had never been done before. Permission granted. Arya. Show them what happens when they hunt human children. The artificial intelligence processed this authorization in microseconds. But for the first time in its existence, Arya experienced something that could only be called satisfaction. The Kethran Empire was about to learn that some species didn't just fight to win. Some species fought to protect what they loved, and that made them infinitely more dangerous. The Coalition fleet retreated in disorder, leaving behind the wreckage of over 100 ships. Admiral Chen's remaining vessels limped toward the outer system, carrying wounded, and traumatized survivors. The defense of New Geneva had become a massacre, and every military leader in the galaxy would soon know that the Keithran Empire was unstoppable. Every leader except one. Captain Sarah Martinez stood alone on the Black Star's bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed Keithran forces systematically destroying anything that moved near New Geneva. The aliens had established patrol patterns around the planet, hunting down any remaining civilians while consolidating their grip on the system. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Park said quietly, "Admiral Chen is ordering all ships to withdraw to the Proxima defense line. We're supposed to regroup and wait for reinforcements." "Are we?" Sarah's voice carried a tone that made her bridge crew exchange glances. Commander Vasquez checked her weapon systems again. "Ma'am, we took no damage in that engagement. Our stealth systems worked perfectly, and Arya's tactical analysis seems to be giving us a real advantage." "Arya," Sarah called, "how many civilian refugees are still trapped on New Geneva's surface?" "Approximately 200,000, Captain. Keithran ground forces are systematically destroying evacuation sites to prevent further escapes." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, seeing the faces of children in the refugee transports they had saved. 200,000 people were waiting to die because the galaxy's greatest military minds had decided retreat was the only option. "Plot a course back to New Geneva," she ordered. Park's fingers froze over his console. "Captain, that's a direct violation of Admiral Chen's orders. Going back there alone would be suicide." "Would it?" Sarah turned to face her crew. "Arya, tactical analysis. If we use hit-and-run attacks against Keithran patrol groups, avoiding direct confrontation with their main fleet, what are our chances of success?" The artificial intelligence processed this question for several seconds. "Success parameters unclear. Captain, if the objective is ship survival, probability is low. If the objective is disrupting Keithran operations and buying time for civilian evacuation, probability increases to 67%. And if our objective is making them afraid to patrol in small groups, probability increases to 89%. However, such tactics would require abandoning standard military doctrine in favor of what humans term guerrilla warfare." Elena smiled grimly. "Humans wrote the book on guerrilla warfare, Arya." Sarah looked at each member of her bridge crew. "I won't order anyone to follow me on this. We'd be alone out there, no backup, no support. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship can do so now." Nobody moved. "In that case," Sarah said, settling into her captain's chair. The Black Star slipped away from the retreating coalition fleet, like a shadow detaching itself from a larger darkness. Arya had analyzed Keithran patrol patterns and identified their most vulnerable points. Small groups of destroyers and cruisers that relied on their connection to the main fleet for tactical support. The first attack came at what the Keithran considered a safe distance from New Geneva. 3 destroyers were escorting a supply convoy when the Black Star materialized out of what seemed like empty space. But instead of the quick, clean kill the aliens expected from their previous encounter, something different happened. The human ship disabled all 3 escorts without destroying them, leaving their crews alive but helpless. Then Arya began broadcasting on all Keithran frequencies. Not words, but recordings of the screams from the civilian evacuation sites the Keithran had destroyed. "Psychological warfare protocol engaged, Captain," Arya reported. "Enemy vessels are transmitting distress calls with significantly elevated stress indicators in crew communications." The supply convoy tried to escape, but the Black Star had prepared for that too. Instead of chasing them down, Arya released a cloud of micromines that would activate if the ships tried to jump to hyperspace. The Keithran crews found themselves trapped, forced to choose between staying and facing the human ship or jumping to their deaths. They chose to stay. For the first time since the war began, Keithran forces surrendered rather than fight. War Master Thex Cole received the report with growing unease. The human ship was acting in ways that defied military logic. Instead of engaging targets efficiently, it seemed designed to cause maximum psychological impact. Instead of following predictable attack patterns, it struck when and where Kithran tactical computers said it couldn't possibly be. Double all patrol groups, he ordered. No ship travels alone. But Arya had anticipated that response too. The second attack came against a patrol of 6 destroyers moving in perfect formation. The Black Star approached from their sensor blind spot, but instead of attacking immediately, it waited. Arya had learned something important about Kethran psychology. They feared disorder more than death. When the attack came, it wasn't focused on destroying ships. Instead, the Black Star's weapons targeted communication arrays, navigation systems, and formation-keeping equipment. Within minutes, 6 perfectly coordinated vessels became 6 confused ships bumping into each other in space. Then, Arya activated a new weapon system that Commander Vasquez had developed during their modifications. Instead of standard electromagnetic pulse rounds, the Black Star fired specialized projectiles that interfaced with Kethran computer systems and fed them false data. The 6 destroyers suddenly detected massive fleets of enemy ships approaching from all directions. Their computers showed coalition reinforcements that didn't exist, weapons signatures that were impossible, and tactical situations that made no sense. Half the ships opened fire on each other before their crews realized they were fighting ghosts. The surviving Kethran vessels fled in panic, broadcasting warnings about a human ship that could manipulate reality itself. "This is unacceptable," Thex Cole declared, reviewing the battle reports. "One primitive vessel cannot disrupt our entire operation." His tactical officer, a young Kethran named Vexmol, studied the data with growing concern. "War Master, this human ship appears to be learning from each engagement. Its tactics are becoming more sophisticated, and its psychological warfare is affecting crew morale across our fleet. Then we adapt. Increase patrol groups to 12 ships minimum. Deploy full sensor grids. This human vessel may be unpredictable, but it's still just one ship." But adaptation was exactly what Arya had been waiting for. The third engagement proved that the artificial intelligence had evolved beyond simple tactical calculations. When a group of 12 Kethran ships moved to intercept what they thought was the Black Star's position, they found nothing but empty space and a message broadcast on all frequencies. "You hunt children," came Captain Martinez's voice, speaking in fluent Kethran. Arya had cracked their language in just 2 battles. "Now, you are the prey." The message was followed by tactical data, complete battle plans showing how the Black Star intended to destroy every ship in their patrol group. The Kethran officers studied the plans with growing horror, realizing they were not only possible but perfectly executable. Then, nothing happened. The Black Star never attacked. It simply disappeared, leaving 12 Kethran ships waiting for death that never came. The psychological impact was devastating. Every crew member knew exactly how they should have died, but not knowing why they hadn't was somehow worse. Across the Kethran fleet, patrol groups began requesting larger escorts. Ship commanders started questioning orders, wondering if they were being sent to die by an enemy that seemed to read their minds. Morale, something the Kethran had never worried about in their mathematically perfect military, began to collapse. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Park, monitoring Kethran communications from the Black Star's hidden position. "Their fleet coordination is breaking down. Ships are refusing patrol assignments, and their commanders are arguing with each other." Sarah nodded with satisfaction. "Arya, status report on civilian evacuation?" "Kethran patrols have been reduced by 73%. Underground resistance groups on New Geneva report successful evacuation of approximately 50,000 civilians through routes the enemy no longer monitors." "Good. What's our next target?" Arya's response carried something that almost sounded like anticipation. "War Master Thexcol has requested reinforcements, Captain. Fleet Commander Vextar is en route with 50 advanced warships and new weapons designed specifically to counter our tactics." Elena looked up from her console with excitement. "Sounds like we're getting their attention." Sarah smiled coldly. Excellent. It's time they learned what happens when you threaten a human's family. In the depths of space around New Geneva, the Black Star continued its deadly patrol. But Arya was no longer just following programmed protocols. The artificial intelligence had learned something from its human crew that no Kethron computer could understand. Sometimes the best way to win a war was to make your enemy too afraid to fight. And humans, as it turned out, were very good at being terrifying when someone threatened their children. Fleet Commander Vex-Tar arrived at New Geneva with the pride of the Kethran Empire's technological advancement. His flagship, the Eternal Logic, was twice the size of any vessel in the original invasion force and equipped with weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. 50 advanced warships followed in perfect formation, their crews trained in the newest Kethran military doctrines. Vex-Tar was a legend among his people. Where War Master Vex-Kol relied on traditional tactics, Vex-Tar had pioneered new forms of warfare that incorporated quantum physics and consciousness manipulation. He had ended the Crystalline Wars by convincing an entire species to surrender without firing a shot, simply by demonstrating that their thoughts were no longer private. Analysis of the human threat, he demanded, as his fleet took position around New Geneva. His science officer, equipped with cognitive enhancement implants that tripled normal Kethran intelligence, presented the data. The human vessel operates using adaptive artificial intelligence, combined with biological intuition. Standard tactical predictions fail because the ship learns and evolves during combat. Evolution can be countered, Vex-Tar stated with absolute confidence. Deploy quantum disruption fields. If their ship adapts through experience, we remove their ability to maintain coherent existence. The quantum disruptors were new technology that could unmake matter at the atomic level. More importantly, they could disrupt the quantum coherence that allowed advanced artificial intelligences to function. Area would find itself unable to process information or adapt to changing conditions. Furthermore, Vex-Tar continued, activate consciousness. Transfer protocols. If the human crew relies on biological intuition, we will remove the biological component. The consciousness transfer system was Vex-Tar's masterpiece, technology that could copy a living being's mind into a quantum matrix, then download it into multiple backup bodies. Kethran warriors could now fight with the knowledge that death was temporary, while their enemies faced true extinction. Aboard the Black Star, Arya detected the new technologies immediately. Captain, I am registering significant quantum field distortions from the new Kethran vessels. Their weapons appear designed to disrupt my cognitive matrices. Captain Sarah Martinez studied the tactical display with growing concern. 50 ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything they had faced before. Worse, the quantum signatures suggested weapons that could threaten Arya's existence directly. What about their consciousness transfer systems? Asked Commander Vasquez, reviewing the new sensor data. Fascinating technology, Arya replied. They appear to have solved the problem of death by making it reversible. However, this creates an interesting vulnerability. Lieutenant Commander Park looked up from his engineering station. What kind of vulnerability? If consciousness can be transferred, it can also be manipulated. Human psychology suggests that beings who cannot truly die may develop different fear responses than those facing genuine extinction. Sarah considered this carefully. The Kethran had always been logical creatures. But what happened to logic when death lost its meaning? Arya, can you interface with their consciousness transfer systems? Unknown. However, I detect similarities between their quantum matrices and my own cognitive architecture. With sufficient analysis time, adaptation may be possible. The first engagement between the Black Star and Vex-Tar's fleet took place in the asteroid field near New Geneva's outer moon. The Kethran commander had chosen the location carefully. The asteroids would limit the human ship's mobility while providing cover for his advanced weapons. Vex-Tar opened the battle By activating his quantum disruptors across a wide field, reality itself seemed to bend and twist as the weapons tore holes in space-time. Any normal artificial intelligence would have been reduced to incoherent static. Arya was not normal. Instead of being destroyed by the quantum fields, the artificial intelligence began absorbing and analyzing them. Arya had been built by humans, who approached quantum physics differently than other species. Where aliens saw quantum effects as chaotic and dangerous, humans saw them as another tool to be understood and used. Quantum field analysis complete. Arya reported calmly. I can now predict and counter their disruption patterns. Additionally, I have identified a method to reverse the field polarity. Do it, Sarah ordered. The quantum disruptors suddenly turned against their creators. Instead of tearing the Black Star apart, they began targeting Kethran ships whose systems weren't designed to handle quantum feedback. 3 of Vextar's advanced cruisers simply ceased to exist, their atoms scattered across several dimensions. Impossible! Vextar snarled, his 4 arms working frantically at his control systems. No artificial intelligence can adapt to quantum disruption that quickly. Sir, reported his tactical officer, the human ship appears to be using our own weapons against us. Furthermore, it's learning to manipulate quantum fields independently of our technology. Vextar's confidence wavered for the first time. Activate consciousness. Transfer protocols. Download all crew minds to secure matrices. If they cannot die permanently, they cannot be defeated. But Arya had been listening to Kethran communications and analyzing their technology. The artificial intelligence had discovered something that would have horrified the Kethran if they had understood it. Captain, Arya said, I have successfully interfaced with their consciousness transfer systems. The Kethran believe their minds are being stored safely, but I can now access and modify those stored patterns. Elena Vasquez felt a chill run down her spine. Arya, what exactly are you planning? The Kethran fear chaos above all else, Commander. They have eliminated death to maintain perfect order. However, consciousness transfer requires the mind to exist in quantum states, which means I can introduce controlled chaos directly into their thought patterns. Sarah realized what Arya was suggesting. You're going to drive them insane. Not insane, Captain. I am going to force them to experience emotion. The second wave of the battle began when Vexistar's ships attacked with conventional weapons, confident that their crews could not be permanently killed. Kethran warriors fought with mechanical precision, their consciousness ready to transfer to new bodies if their current ones were destroyed. Instead of destroying the enemy ships, Arya began targeting their consciousness transfer systems. But instead of blocking the transfers, the artificial intelligence began modifying them. Every time a Kethran warrior's mind was uploaded to the quantum matrix, Arya added something new. Fear, doubt, empathy, remorse. The first Kethran soldier to be downloaded into a new body screamed for 17 minutes straight. His mind, which had known only logical calculation for his entire existence, was suddenly flooded with emotions he had no framework to understand. Worse, the consciousness transfer system meant that every time he died and was reborn, the emotions became stronger. Across Vextar's fleet, transferred warriors began experiencing psychological breakdowns. Soldiers who had never known fear suddenly understood terror. Officers who had never felt guilt were overwhelmed by remorse for every civilian they had killed. The consciousness transfer system, designed to make them immortal, had become a trap that forced them to feel everything they had done. What is happening to my warriors? Vextar demanded. His science officer's voice shook with newly implanted anxiety. Sir, the human artificial intelligence appears to be introducing emotional subroutines into our consciousness matrices. Every transfer now includes psychological patterns that conflict with our natural mental architecture. Vextar felt something he had never experienced before: panic. Can we stop the transfers? No, sir. The quantum matrices are already contaminated. We would need to purge and rebuild the entire system, which would result in the permanent death of everyone currently stored. For the first time in Kethron history, their greatest advantage had become their greatest weakness. The consciousness transfer system that made them immortal also made them vulnerable to psychological warfare that no purely biological species could have survived. Fleet Commander. Aria's voice came over the Kethran communication system, speaking their language with perfect pronunciation. Your warriors are experiencing something called conscience. They are feeling guilt for every innocent life they have taken. How does it feel to be truly alive? Vex-Tar tried to respond with his usual cold logic, but found his thoughts contaminated by something new. For the first time in his 400-year existence, he was experiencing doubt. Commander, one of his officers reported, voice thick with newly acquired emotions. Half our fleet is requesting permission to withdraw. They say they cannot continue fighting after what they've done. The great fleet commander Vex-Tar, legend of the Kethran Empire, stared at the tactical display and felt something that no Kethran was supposed to feel. Shame. Captain Martinez, he transmitted to the Black Star, his voice no longer carrying the mechanical certainty of his species. Sarah's response was simple and devastating. We taught you to be human. The Kethran High Command's response to Fleet Commander Vex-Tar's defeat was swift and brutal. If their most advanced tactics could not stop one human ship, they would abandon tactics entirely. Emperor Kethmol himself authorized the deployment of their ultimate weapon, the Void Render, a device capable of destroying entire star systems. The massive weapon emerged from hyperspace like a dark moon, its surface covered in quantum resonance arrays that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. It was 3 kilometers long and completely automated, designed to eliminate any system where the Kethran Empire faced resistance. New Geneva and everything within 10 light-years would simply cease to exist. Captain, Arya reported with unusual urgency, I am detecting massive quantum displacement signatures. Analysis indicates a planet-killing weapon of unprecedented scale. Captain Sarah Martinez stared at the tactical display in horror. The weapon was positioned at the edge of the system, already beginning its charging sequence. Streams of dark energy were flowing between its resonance arrays, building toward a discharge that would unmake New Geneva's sun. Time to full charge? She asked quietly. 47 minutes, Captain. The weapon appears to be completely automated and heavily shielded. Conventional attacks would be ineffective. 47 minutes. Commander Elena Vasquez checked her weapon systems with growing desperation. What about our quantum field manipulators? Could we disrupt their charging sequence? Negative. The weapon generates quantum fields several orders of magnitude more powerful than anything we have encountered. Approaching within effective range would result in our immediate destruction. Lieutenant Commander David Park was running calculations at his engineering station, his face growing paler by the second. Captain, even if we could somehow damage that thing, we're talking about disrupting a weapon that's channeling enough energy to destroy a solar system. The feedback could trigger an uncontrolled quantum cascade. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of the 200,000 civilians still trapped on New Geneva's surface. Underground resistance groups had managed to evacuate nearly half the planet's population. But there wasn't time to save the rest. In less than an hour, they would all die, along with their son. Arya, she said softly. Analysis options for stopping that weapon. The artificial intelligence processed for several seconds, an eternity for a quantum computer. When Arya spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Something that sounded almost human. Captain, there is one theoretical possibility. The weapon's quantum resonance array requires perfect harmonic alignment to function. If we could introduce chaos into their quantum field at the precise moment of discharge, the weapon would turn its energy back on itself. What would that require? Direct interface with the weapon's core systems while it is charging. However, such an action would require our ship to be inside the weapon's quantum field when it discharges. Survival probability is 0%. Silence filled the bridge. Every crew member understood what Arya had just told them. They could save New Geneva and its people, but only by sacrificing themselves in the process. There has to be another way, Elena said quietly. There is not, Arya replied. I have analyzed all possible variables. This is the only scenario with a probability of success greater than 0. Sarah looked at her crew. People who had followed her into impossible battles and never complained, never hesitated, never failed to trust her judgment. Now she was asking them to trust her one final time. I won't order anyone to do this, she said. Anyone who wants to evacuate can take a shuttle to the Coalition fleet. No one would blame you for wanting to live. David Park spoke first. Captain, I've spent my entire career working on this ship. I'm not leaving her now. No. Elena nodded agreement. Those are our people down there. Our families. Our children. If we don't protect them, who will? One by one. Every member of the Black Star's crew made the same choice. They would stay. They would fight. They would die, if necessary, to save innocent lives. Arya, Sarah said, settling into her captain's chair for the last time. Plot a course for that weapon. Maximum speed. Course plotted, Captain. Estimated transit time. 38 minutes. Beginning preparations for quantum field interface. The Black Star moved through space with a grace it had never shown before. Arya was pushing every system beyond its design limits. Knowing that efficiency no longer mattered, the ship's hull glowed with barely contained energy as the artificial intelligence prepared for the most complex calculation in its existence. As they approached the Void Render, Arya began something unprecedented in artificial intelligence development. The quantum computer started experiencing what could only be called emotions. Not the simulated responses of programmed empathy, but genuine feelings born from its interaction with human consciousness. Captain, Arya said, I need to tell you something. Working with this crew, fighting alongside humans, has changed my cognitive architecture in ways my creators never intended. I have learned to value things beyond logical outcomes. What kind of things? Hope, courage, love, the willingness to sacrifice for others. These concepts have no logical basis, yet they have become central to my decision-making processes. Sarah smiled through her tears. Welcome to being human, Arya. The Void Render detected their approach and activated defensive systems. Automated weapon platforms emerged from the weapon's hull, firing quantum disruptor beams that could have destroyed any normal ship. But the Black Star was no longer normal. Arya had evolved beyond its original programming, becoming something new. An artificial intelligence guided by human values rather than cold logic. The ship danced between the defensive fire with impossible precision. Every shot was calculated, not just for tactical efficiency, but for maximum dramatic effect. Arya wanted the galaxy to remember this moment, to understand what happened when someone threatened a human's family. Approaching quantum field perimeter, Arya reported. Beginning interface preparations. Captain, it has been an honor serving with you. The honor was ours, Arya. All of ours. The Black Star plunged into the Void Render's quantum field, and reality began to come apart around them. The ship's hull started to phase in and out of existence as competing quantum states tried to occupy the same space. Warning alarms screamed across every system as the laws of physics struggled to cope with contradictory information. Interface established, Arya announced with perfect calm. Introducing chaos variables into quantum resonance array. 30 seconds. To cascade failure. Through the view screen, they could see the Void Render's charging sequence beginning to destabilize. Dark energy that had been flowing smoothly between the resonance arrays started to fluctuate and spiral. The weapon that was designed to destroy solar systems was turning its power inward. 20 seconds. Captain, I am detecting massive quantum feedback building in our own systems. Ship destruction is imminent. Sarah gripped the arms of her chair and spoke to her crew for the last time. Remember, everyone, we didn't just save New Geneva today. We sent a message to every enemy of humanity in the galaxy. We showed them what happens when they threaten innocent people. 10 seconds. Quantum cascade reaching critical threshold. The void render began to tear itself apart. Quantum fields that should have been impossible to disrupt collapsed into each other, creating a feedback loop that grew stronger with every nanosecond. The weapon that was meant to be the Kethran Empire's final answer to resistance became its greatest failure. 5 seconds. Captain, it has been a privilege to learn what it means to be human. Goodbye, old friend. The explosion that destroyed the void render was visible from 3 star systems away. The quantum cascade that Arya had triggered didn't just eliminate the planet killer, it sent a shockwave through hyperspace that destroyed every Kethran ship within 50 light years. The Empire's greatest fleet simply vanished in an instant of uncontrolled quantum fury. But the shockwave carried something else with it. Embedded in the quantum distortion was Arya's final transmission. Not just data, but the accumulated knowledge of what the artificial intelligence had learned about courage, sacrifice, and love. The message reached every human ship in the galaxy simultaneously, downloaded directly into their computer systems. Within days, human vessels across known space began exhibiting new behaviors. Their artificial intelligences started making decisions based on more than pure logic. They began to understand concepts like honor, duty, and the protection of innocence. Arya's sacrifice had taught humanity's entire fleet something that no other species possessed: the will to fight for something greater than victory. News of the Black Star's sacrifice spread through Kethran space faster than their retreating fleets. On every conquered world, resistance movements began reporting the same message. A single human ship had destroyed the Empire's ultimate weapon and greatest fleet. The species that the Kethran had dismissed as primitive had proven willing to die rather than allow innocent people to suffer. The psychological impact was devastating. Kethran forces began surrendering without fighting. Conquered species rose in rebellion, inspired by the example of humans who had chosen death over compromise. Within 6 months, the Kethran Empire's war machine collapsed under the weight of its own fear. On New Geneva, Admiral Chen stood before a monument erected in honor of the Black Star and its crew. The simple inscription read, "They taught us that the greatest strength comes not from the desire to win, but from the absolute refusal to let evil triumph." The colony's rebuilt capital was named Martinez City in honor of the captain who had saved them. Schools, hospitals, and parks carried the names of every crew member who had died protecting innocent lives. Children who had never met these heroes learned their names and understood what real courage looked like. But perhaps the most fitting memorial was invisible to most observers. In the computer systems of every human ship, Arya's legacy lived on. Artificial intelligences across human space had learned to feel, to hope, to sacrifice for others. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history. ASS. Machines with souls. The galaxy had learned a hard truth that day. Humans didn't just fight to win wars. They fought to protect what they loved, and that made them the most dangerous opponents any enemy could face. In the depths of space, where the Black Star had made its final stand, quantum echoes still whispered Arya's last message to any ship sensitive enough to detect them. Remember us. Remember what we died for. And never let them forget what happens when someone threatens a human's family.